Honorabilis, Professor Prodi, Mr. Chairman Fassino, Professor Gambetta, Madam Ambassador, distinguished guests. Let me first of all thank President Napolitano and my colleague, Foreign Minister Luigi Di Maio, for their addresses they've sent to honor President Dubček. We appreciate them a lot. I'm very glad that we are meeting at this prestigious university, which has educated and welcomed significant personalities from all areas of knowledge and thought. I'm delighted to be here with you at this ceremony commemorating Alexandra Dubček. He would have celebrated his 100th birth on the 27th of November this year. At the same time, it has been 33 years since his return to public life and since this university, with this bold decision, restored Dubček's respect, honor, and human dignity. I would like to extend my warmest and most heartfelt thanks to Rector Giovanni Molari for the fact that the university he represents today has never compromised on the ideals and values of a democratic civil society. I am honored by the presence of Professor Prodi, by the President of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Piero Fassino, by Professor Gambetta. These are truly honorable personalities who knew Alexandra Dubček, and I am glad that they will share their memories of him with us. The University of Bologna stood by Dubček during the invasion by Warsaw Pact troops in 1968 and afterwards, during the turbulent years in which he was expelled from political and social life. During the celebrations of the 900th anniversary of its founding, the University of Bologna saw an opportunity to rehabilitate him internationally, which, despite many attempts, eventually happened in November 1988. The awarding of an honorary doctorate by the University of Bologna was an important act of solidarity by Italy, an act of empathy with the Czechoslovak public, then still trapped behind the Iron Curtain. The regime at the time, which was even critical of Gorbachev's perestroika, was very reluctant to succumb to the pressure from the democratic world and only allowed Dubček to travel to Italy after many obstructions. The communist regime tried to silence the message from Bologna, yet it failed. Alexandra Dubček's political heritage certainly exists still today. It is a message passed on to our generations that democracy and freedom are the most important values. The experiment to build a regime without democracy and freedom was a tragic experience. At the end of his life, Alexandra Dubček became an outspoken supporter of European integration. As Dubček's friend Luciano Antonetti remembered in November 1988, I quote, "He was in the spotlight, and throughout his stay in Italy, he was followed by journalists, by friends, supporters, but above all by ordinary people. Dubček found himself overwhelmed by the interests of the Western world, even though he realized that he had to finish his struggle at home. He remained faithful to his homeland at all times and under all circumstances. And before leaving Italy, he said he would come back, I quote, even if he had to go back across the barbed wire fence." End of quote. By awarding him an honorary doctorate, the University of Bologna restored Dubček's personal and social dignity. Many other honorary doctorates and international awards followed, such as the Sakharov Prize for Freedom of Thought, which was granted to him on the 22nd of November 1989, only a few days after the turning point of our Velvet Revolution. From this perspective, the University of Bologna was the initiator of his rehabilitation process, which is all the more important because it was initiated during the period of the communist regime. As remembered by Professor Gambetta, who accompanied Dubček on his journey to Italy, he said, "We wanted somebody who was suffering from the violation of his rights to receive the honorary doctorate." Dubček was deprived of his political and personal freedom, even though formally he was not put in prison. In November 1988, Dubček received a prolonged standing ovation by a crowded Aula Magna audience. His legacy and belief in human values merged in a symbiosis with that uneasing applause here in Bologna. Ladies and gentlemen, our experience of 1968 has a deeper meaning. The problem was not in the generation of 68, since their aspirations and desires for freedom were as strong as authentic as those repeated by the generation of 89. Socialism with the human face could not be built in 1968 because the former regime was unable to reform itself and was still strong enough to suppress the call for freedom. November 1989 also marked the end of repression for Alexandra Dubček and his loved ones. As Speaker of the Parliament of the common Czechoslovak state, he received social and political recognition again. Unfortunately, a tragic accident in autumn of 1992 made it impossible for him to participate in the further democratic development of Slovakia. In a large part of the world, Dubček has received recognition for his efforts, one of the few Central European politicians of the time to be so acknowledged. He has become an honorary citizen of several major cities, including Bologna, Venice, and Florence, which I visited yesterday. His supporters and friends included world leaders and intellectuals. During his stay in Italy, his meeting with Pope John Paul II was unforgettable. I would like to express my gratitude to Italy, to the city of Bologna, its people, and the university for not forgetting Alexandra Dubček even after 20 years, for supporting him in his ideas and opinions during his many years of political and social exile. Italy and Bologna showed him support and affection in his last days, when after a tragic accident, the city of Bologna was ready to transport him to the Rizzoli Clinic. The generation of Alexandra Dubček is slowly disappearing. However, the challenges the whole world is facing today are more dramatic than ever before, and therefore the legacy of the Slovak politician, humanist and defender of political dialogue is even more urgent. Nowadays, we often hear that the diversity of the world is also reflected in different forms of democracy. However, with all due respect to the particularities, democracy and freedom are universal. Either they are or they are not. This also applies to the case of Bologna student of Egyptian origin, Patrick Zaki, to the case of Belarusians' right to freedom of expression, or to the rights of women and girls in Afghanistan. Human rights belong to the people. They do not belong to the states or political parties. And finally, towards the end of his life, he saw and experienced democracy and full freedom, and together with him, the whole generation of 68 did, without attributes and metaphors. The unexpected turns in Alexandra Dubček's life also prove this obvious truth. Thank you very much.